We're gonna put this back together. Hopefully have Nick have at least no more issues in this department.
I'll be back.
We may have a few others.
What's up, RideorRot fam? Welcome to the channel. Today we are headed over to Pellet's shop to check out and see what's going on with that Sporty. I have an idea and he texts me and he thinks the same idea. We're thinking something in the switch housing, whether it's the push to start button, the ignition, something's grounding out or something wire pinched, something silly. We think it's something silly. I hope it's something silly. But we're heading there now and we are gonna get that thing pulled apart and start looking at it, and we're gonna figure this out because I need to get a bike out riding. Oh, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Nick and I do all types of stuff motorcycle related. Yeah. Whole dance party going on back here. Working on this Bad Mama Jamma. You say you're putting primary back on?
Yep, putting the primary back on. This 1970 BSA that I've been working on for quite a while. Total engine rebuild here, freshen it up. Put back together. I got a few, before I put the primary cover on, I still got a little work to do to it yet. The guy dropped it at one point, so it was cracked, so I welded it up and I'm trying to smooth that back over and make it look the best I can.
Yeah.
It'll probably never look quite new again, but it won't have a crack leaking oil all over.
Right. This is cool though. I remember when you were working on the case itself.
Yeah, you came over that day and I was just putting the bottom end back together and getting that all set up. So here we are now, and all I got left to do is finish working on the head, get the engine portion back together, and then we'll get the rest of it bolted together and see if I it up or not.
I don't think you did. I think you got it.
Well, you know, I'm human, I make mistakes.
Hey,
that's all I'm saying.
We all do, man.
Right, that's part of the human nature.
Right. And on my board right here, we're going to throw it up in a lift. We're going to kind of go, and he's going to teach me, and hopefully teach some of you guys, some diagnostics on some things like this, just to, yeah, get it all straightened out.
Your coil, this is a single fire aftermarket coil, so I know that the middle one is going to be power.
Okay.
And so with key on, I check, and I know that there's no power there. Run stop switch on or off, no power. So the run stop switch, when you turn it to the on position, is what gives you power to your coil and your ignition system, and that's what fires the bike up.
Right.
So I have no power at the coil.
Okay.
So I know that right now the coil or the ignition may or may not be bad. We're just not getting any power. That's causing the bike not to start. Also, the starter button is not getting. So I also know that terminal 50 down here on the starter, when I hit it, is not going to get 12 volts either.
Okay.
So we're going to start checking up here and working our way backwards through the system to find out what is not causing it to get power at the ignition. Your run stop switch, and then when you turn your run stop switch to the run position, it jumps power to the start button, allowing everything to happen. So we just might not be getting power to the run stop switch at this point.
That could be possibly what was engaging the starter if the button was stuck.
Right, could be. Sort it out.
Yeah.
And yeah, leaving it on. So we'll follow this down a little more. We'll get these wires out of here, and we will see. It advances the timing based on the engine vacuum coming out of the manifold. Sends an electronic signal to your ignition module. Says, hey, advance the timing, which is a preset designation. A lot of times what happens when we put electronic ignitions in, instead of using the VOES switch, we will just ground the VOES wire, and that will just leave it fully advanced.
Sure. Okay.
Sometimes, just depends on what you want to do.
Right.
But what you'll notice is a symptom of the VOES switch being bad. You try to accelerate on anything, and it wants to kind of cut out almost like you're hitting a rev limiter. It's just not going to want to act right because it's not advancing the timing. So therefore, it's not in the right direction to have timing. And we'll get into a lot more of understanding why you got advanced timing, what that does. We get into later talks about engines and do some more talks about that.
Sure. Okay. So far, guys, that snapped, and then underneath the clamp here, it was my fault. It happens. So getting the bike had a rat nest of wiring on it, and I didn't want to dig into any of that because I know myself and I would probably screw something up. I don't like electrical work. Josh loves it. Like, he was like, dude, I cannot wait to get into this thing. And
I've done it once or twice, you know.
Pulled all the wiring harnesses out of the bars themselves. Gonna diag. Oh,
We
man.
have some issues there.
Yeah, we do.
And I'll show you guys what this issue is caused by. Bars, pay attention to this, guys, when you wire your own handlebars. You got your hole that comes out here and it goes down through this hole. You only have so much room to rotate. This is an exaggeration, but see there, if you rotated too far, then you're going to cut your wires off. This was rotated the other way. Let's do for exaggeration purposes that way, rotated too far forward, pinching those wires. So pay attention to that. Sometimes you might have to enlarge in this hole. Sometimes, like you were talking about, Nick, just changing to a different pullback riser or no pullback at all to get that in a position where it's not going to cause you an issue.
Yep. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to my boys out of LA Choppers. It's a nice setup, but I kind of want my arm position a little bit different. The bike guru.
Now we're gonna go down through this. We're gonna fix the issues. We're gonna put this back together. We're gonna hopefully have Nick have no more issues in this department.
I'll be back.
We may have a few others, but we'll address those when the time comes as well. That's right. That goes right to your ignition power in. So that wasn't either soldered well or they just had them twisted together. And here, let's just see if we can pull this off. Sometimes you can pull the shrink tubing right off. Oh, yeah. Look at that. So like, soldered. Yeah, it doesn't even look like it was soldered. I bet they had it twisted together. And let's cut one of these other ones off that are still together and see if maybe they did try to solder it, but didn't do a very good job. They were trying to. And they were trying to do what they call a mechanical splice.
Yeah.
But I'll show you guys different soldering techniques that work a lot better and aren't as big and won't cause you as many problems in the future. So I'm going to show you guys kind of a better soldering technique than what you may have been taught in the past. Now in the past, they wanted you to strip off quite a big chunk. You may have been taught to make yourself a good, they call a mechanical splice, where you're going to wrap it around each other. I didn't even strip off enough to do it. Stripped off quite a bit. It's also going to take up a lot of length of wire. So now what they would have you do then is you would wrap this around each other in a fashion like so. So it's strong, won't quite come apart, right? Then you would solder it together, cover it with your shrink tubing. Kind of a useless waste of time. How much weight are you really trying to hold with your big mechanical splice there? You trying to pull up a whole nother motorcycle with it or something? How strong does your wire really need to be? I'm going to show you guys a technique that we use nowadays. Really all you need is a tiny bit. Just about as much as your wire diameter is around, about how much you need to take off. Maybe just slightly more, but not a lot. I'm going to use my little third hand tool here, and we're going to get a little bit of flux on both ends of our wire. And what we're going to do here, we'll stick this in the third hand tool, and we are just going to mate these together like so. Okay, soldering iron, nice and hot. Always want to touch your tip before and after every solder joint. Get ourselves a little bit of solder on here. And we're going to hold it here for a few seconds, not long. We don't want it to get too hot. We want the solder to suck into our joint. There we go. Look at that. Nice, good color, shiny, nice little dot. And we are, as you see, soldered all the way around. And it's nice and strong. Come here. Follow along to the other side here. Look at that.
Took a lot of
effort. Look what broke.
the wire.
Not my solder joint. So,
yeah,
for all you people that are out there, oh, you need a good mechanical splice. Nope, you just need to learn how to solder properly. Damn. Techniques. We're going to start soldering all these wires, broken wires, poorly jointed back together, and get this all back together. And I just have a feling that the bike might start and run okay.
Have a feeling.
Just a feeling, a hunch, if you will.
We have a hunch.
One thing you'll notice is I put my shrink tubing on my wire before I make my joint. Also notice how far away I have it from my joint, because the heat will transfer and melt your heat shrink, and it's a pain in the butt to get it back up there once you've done that. Another little trick to doing this is, and one of the reasons why we do it, is that nice perfect little ball I had on the last joint that I showed you. Leaves no sharp edges. Well, if you do happen to come across and it does come up with a slight sharp edge, pair of pliers, flat, smooth, no ridges on them. Solder is malleable, soft, strong, but soft. There. Now I have made that so it's not got a sharp edge sticking out. No big deal. Didn't crush nothing, not gonna hurt nothing, not gonna affect nothing. I can slide my shrink tubing back over my joint. We want our joint to be in the middle of our shrink tubing, somewhere in there. I use a little butane torch to shrink my tubing. Now another thing you might hear out in the world is, oh, you gotta use a heat gun. Yeah, you do. You don't have to. Reason they do that is because people get a little silly with their flame and burn their stuff. You don't need a lot of heat, just a little bit. Notice how far I keep this back? Just a little bit. Boy, look at that. No burn, no scoring, nice and shrink. You can see where my joint was, and nice and strong. So we're gonna continue right along on our plan and get this all soldered back up, fix some more things. Stay tuned.
Yeah, boy.
Here's another little scenario that might happen to you is you might get a little too much solder on your joint and it's dripping down like that. Not a big deal. Clean your soldering tip back off. We're just gonna set it on here and suck a little off. Voila, I got my nice little healthy soldering joint again. Not too big.
Never heard that.
Perfect. All right. So we got this portion soldered back together. Look at that, nice and clean. No big deal. And we cover that back up. What we're going to examine now is where these were pinched in the handlebars, where I was showing you guys where the hole was. What we're seeing is that it's penetrated, but probably not broken. Open that up a little bit there, and if you can kind of zoom in, you can see that the wires, the strands, it doesn't look like they're broken. It just chafed there. So we can actually get away with putting a piece of shrink tubing back over this. That way we don't have more exposure, a big area. Just cover that up with some shrink tubing, put it back in. Here's what we're looking for. Inside of every piece of wire are many pieces of wire all twisted together. For those of you that know a little bit about electricity and testing electricity, we usually check a wire for continuity or ohms. If I cut this and I only got those two little pieces of wire hanging there out of all that, let's say these are the only two pieces hanging on, I test this with my meter, it's going to show that I have great continuity, 0 ohms. Once you put power through it, it's not going to be able to come across. So this is something you want to look for when you guys are out there chasing electrical gremlins sometimes. You may test a wire and it says you got great continuity and you don't. So sometimes you'll want to use what they call a voltage drop, where you test backwards across the circuit for voltage. Something we'll get into later down the road, but just kind of showing you guys something you might look for there, pay attention to. A little scenario here where it's just a little crack in the insulation. You might not actually have to cut apart and repair. Just put some shrink tubing over it. You'll get away with it okay. But examine it. Notice I got my little magnifiers out here. I'm looking in there, making sure, because if there's a bunch of those cut and I put this back together, and it's still not going to have no power, just like it was broken. So
don't want that.
Yeah, don't want that. Just a little something to think about. Show you guys further tutorials. We'll be going more depth about this kind of stuff.
Cool.
One of the things here, folks, is I see a lot of people always want to put Loctite on their screws. And I understand the thought process behind it. Oh, I don't want my screws to be backing out. However, when Loctite mixes with aluminum, even blue Loctite can be detrimental to your threads, especially if it's something that's going to come in and out. Handlebars, I recommend that you just make a part of your critical fastener checks. Every time you service your motorcycle, every time you do an oil change, every 5,000 miles, your service interval, check critical fasteners. There's more fasteners to be checked than just in the book. Again, something more going to be going on in the future, talking about critical fastener checks and things, why we do them. But yeah, just be cautious with your Loctite. It can cause you more harm than good sometimes.
That's basically the pin.
That's the pin. Male and female pin, obviously.
The birds and the bees.
Yeah, only different.
Just same, just different.
A, B, and C. So we're just gonna stick, we'll start with black and red. We're gonna go in pin A. Click, it's in. Pin C is this way, so we'll put gray in pin C. Clicked in. And white with a black tracer in pin B. In there, this is the secondary lock. There's locks down in there, as you can see. Yeah. And this is the secondary lock that goes in there and ensures that those locks will not come undone in the event you're riding down the road or something.
Don't want that.
Yeah, and you can just pull that back out with your pair of pliers later, and then stick your little screwdriver in there, pull the tang back, and pull them right out.
Okay.
So now we'll do the other side, and hopefully that will complete our repair.
Yeah. Go out and do some wheelies.
Wheelies.
Woo! It runs again. Thanks, Bikeroo. Think we got her all straightened out, y'all. I gotta get a different pipe on this thing. I do not like the way this thing sounds. Pretty good? All right, guys, the bike is back together. We're gonna hop on her. I got the old lady following me because I have very bad luck. We're gonna get this thing home, and then tomorrow we're gonna dig in a little bit more, do a few more things, but we should be good to go by now. So yeah, thanks for watching, and hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button to come back for more motorcycle content, because there's a lot more coming. Later, guys.